Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Penny Lane Podcast with scalperRyan. During the episode, we talked about how Ryan plays the piano and how that correlates to his trading. So as a special treat after this episode, you can hear him playing piano. So please stay tuned for that. Ryan, hi. Welcome to the Penny Lane Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
We're so happy to have you. Justin?
Yes.
Fresh in from Gainesville, Florida.
Yes, quite the place. Very much enjoyed my time. Very much happy to no longer be there. So, polar opposite. That's kind of a cliche term, but we're talking about the country of Canada, and that is very far away from Florida.
So far. So, Ryan, you're from Canada, and Justin was just before. Justin was just before we started the recording talking to you about trading in Canada, and I know that everyone would love to hear about that.
Yeah, so it's trading in Canada is it's no different than really trading in the U.S. as far as I know. But the biggest obstacle that we have in Canada is most of us pay fees, commissions of some sort. There are brokers like Trade Zero that allow you to trade no commission, but you can trade in a margin account there. But I typically like to trade in my tax-free savings, which is basically like your IRA down there. But regardless, we end up having to pay fees, and that's a really difficult thing to kind of struggle with. I came to terms with it late last year. That it's just a fact of life. It's kind of cost doing business, so to speak. But for the longest time, I'd struggle with entering a trade and thinking, immediately knowing I'm already in the red. So thinking, how do I manage this so I can, like, it was always in my mental head where I was like, okay, I got to be up a little bit in order to break even, right? So it was a struggle, especially trying to grow my account. Eventually I got to a point where I'm like, you know what, it didn't even matter at a point. I'm like, it's going to be a fact of life. If I trust my trade, if I trust my process, then it's just going to be the cost of doing business, right? I found it more difficult since kind of switching over to large cap option world lately, that it's a lot more difficult because the option contracts are they're a lot more expensive. They go against you a lot quicker. So that break even can go against you really quick. So it can definitely be a struggle. But I think if you have the right process, you have the right mentality, and just understand that it's a fact of life, so to speak, then you can kind of move forward from there, right?
What's our kind of average rate there for, I'm sure it varies on the type of trade, but what's kind of the average rate that you're having to account for on each trade?
So it depends on the broker you're on. Interactive Brokers most of them have a flat fee. So I use Interactive Brokers recently. I used Quest Trade in Canada before then, and I still use them. But I sign up for package fees, so I'll end up paying just a flat fee based on any size. So, for example, for Quest Trade for commons, I'll pay $4.95 for a trade for any size. Imagine going small size though and paying $4.95 per trade on a small size, and scaling in and scaling out. That adds up tremendously, right?
Yeah, that's it. We don't know how nice we have it, not having to pay any money. It's great. You know, it's funny is we've talked about this before with Kate Blaine, and she got into LIN or LTNC as a, just to like, it was fun just to trade into it, trade out of it. And it was, $2 worth of stock, but $5 worth of
I
commission.
Think it was $7.
So yeah, which is hilarious. So upside down on that one for forever.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the thing I've noticed, especially moving over to options. And, when I've gone over to options, I've kind of, and I don't really want to talk about options because I'm still kind of new in it, but it's, I've noticed that because I've gone smaller size because I'm learning, and that's typically what you do. You should size small when you're learning something new. But I was noticing, I'm like, man, my account, like, it feels like I'm bleeding. Why am I bleeding? I'm like, oh man, because the commissions are just killing me, right? It's like the scaling in, scaling out constantly and paying. I think for the broker I was on, my option contracts, I think, were $6.95 for the first contract and 65 cents for every additional contract after. So I was just getting crushed because I was obviously you're going to take a few paper cuts along the way, but I was like, wow, commissions are hard, right? And then so I flipped over to paper one day when I was trying to be broker, And I'm like, wow, this is amazing, not having to consider commissions. I'm like, I was talking to some of my US friends. I'm like, wow, you guys have it really lucky. I never even gave it much consideration until just right now.
We actually talked about that with Brad Mullins Momentum, when he was on the podcast, because when he started, he said the fees were just killing him.
Mm-hmm.
And then Robinhood came out and it was like off to the races. So, I hope that you get that soon.
Yeah, I heard there's a rumor that there's going to be some no fees commission or brokers soon. So I'm hoping that's the case. I think that would definitely change the game. So cross your fingers.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Well, let's get into your story, how you started trading, when you started trading, and just if you could tell us a little bit about that. We also love to know how long it took you to become profitable.
Well, I started trading quotations 3 years ago. My first big win ever was AMRN. I heard about a penny stock that someone would come in. I always had done investing, so just throw in like the big blue chips and everything. But someone had said, "Hey, you know what? You should try this whole trading thing." I know nothing about charts, so I heard this big rumor about this fish oil thing with the AMRN. Threw a bunch of money into it at $2. 2 weeks later, it was at 14. I was like, "Oh my goodness, this is crazy." How can I make money? I can make money doing this. Didn't know a thing about charts, and then real life and cashed out. Was pretty happy, and then work and life took over. So didn't really. It kind of ignored everything for a while, and then COVID came around, and I'll happily admit I was a COVID baby for the trading world. Work took a dive. Needed to find something else, and trading was always something that interested me. So started learning more about charts. Started learning more about just the concepts and everything, and still realized that was in March of 2020. Still realized 3 months later I knew absolutely nothing. I won a lot just by following blind, and then I lost a lot just by following blind. So I really took the time just to understand, just to really kind of figure myself out and really try to learn what am I doing wrong, what am I doing right. And so I joined Atlas Discord at the time, and I learned. I just sat and watched. I found some traders that I really um, related to, their styles, their personalities, and just putting myself out there, DMing them, reaching out to them, talking to them, trying to talk to them every day I could, and then yeah, eventually I just got the confidence to say, you know what, I can play a little bit more. So that was fall of last year, and I started to just play a little more. But then I started still struggling with that. uh, boom and bust cycle. I would win some, lose some. I was almost overanalyzed. It was analysis paralysis. I knew too much at that time, right? So um, at the time, I talked to Rodessa. I don't know if you guys had Rodessa on before. I think you guys have. And then Brady Atlas. So they both became my mentors and helped guide me and kind of hone me in on my small cap commons game. And so it kind of took a while. I kind of realized that I knew everything I needed. I had all the knowledge, I had all the tools. I just needed to know how to apply them. And I'm still learning to apply them, I should say, but I learned to apply them a lot better. So what Brady and Rhodes did is that they helped me kind of hone it in over time, over a couple months. And come January, I hit my stride. Everything clicked in small cap world where I was able to, everything was hot then too, right? So it helped, but I gained a ton of confidence in terms of sizing, in terms of plays, in terms of finding my own plays at that point, and kind of went to the races from there. Like everyone else, though, I kind of suffered a little bit of a drawdown when things kind of crashed in late February, March. So I really needed to kind of take a step back, size down, reevaluate, and yeah. So it's kind of a slow summer, right? And I think that's kind of where I'm at right now.
What was the draw during 2020? Was it that you had more time on your hands? Was it that the market had dropped so much that you knew, even though you're new to trading, that there was opportunity? Or was it something completely separate? What drew you in during that time?
It's a great question. It's kind of a little bit of everything. So I saw in March everything crashed. I had money sitting there, and I was thinking, oh, you know what? There's a big draw. There's a market drawdown. Again, I knew nothing about charts, but I know all these blue chips. I hear Boeing, I hear Disney, all these blue chips and Microsoft. They're all falling. well, maybe these are good times to buy. I never caught the bottom, right? Obviously, but I threw a bunch of money in, and then I thought, you know what, I want to see how it grows. So I started watching it grow, and then I had more time, like you said. My work literally fell off a cliff. I'm very fortunate that I always was work from home, so I never had to deal with the, coming home and getting crushed by that. But I had no work at all. So I started monitoring my trade, not my trades, my positions in Boeing and all that, and realizing going up and down. Then I started asking myself, why are they going up and down? Oh, there's charts, there's all this kind of stuff, and then I started to realize, oh, there is actually some technical analysis to this and some qualitative understanding to understanding all this, right? So that's kind of the draw. And then I started realizing I can, as a professional engineer and someone who's very strong in math and probability, like I can see a chart. Wow, this is something I can potentially do, right? Like why if someone else can make money doing this, why can't I, right? So that's kind of the draw to that.
The correlation between trading and engineers is unbelievable.
Yep.
Just unbelievable. All the traders who I admire, especially admire their charting, are all engineers. Happy Gilmore being the first.
Okay.
And yeah. But I think that's very cool that correlation happened. So you trade mostly chart patterns, or is it EMAs, support resistance, supply demand? Like what's your main indicator on the chart?
My main indicator is volume, really. Volume and supply and demand. And I guess daily levels too. I kind of draw daily levels, but I don't use moving averages at all. I don't use EMAs. I don't use VWAP. I don't use any of that. I tried at one point when I first started, and I found it was too much noise. I found I was relying on it too much. So what I find, even as I've transferred over to large cap land, um, my best trading is done just using being able to VPA, volume price analysis, and being able to identify key levels on the hourly, 4 hour, daily, and identifying key supply and demand zones. So aside from that, though, I don't use anything else.
Cool. So very clean charts for you.
Yes.
And then you mentioned that Atlas was your first Discord. Are you in Atlas today?
No, I've kind of grown from there. I have tremendous respect and a lot of fond memories from them. It just it came to a point where I needed to kind of grow and try to find another way of not another way, but just kind of grow my own trading and try to go a little bit more on my own. So I found as soon as I started to kind of focus on myself, I got better. I stopped looking for confirmation bias from my colleagues. I stopped mining things on Twitter. I stopped looking for my friends to kind of tell me what to do, right? Give me ideas. So um, I'm with GMT right now, which is a smaller Discord. But mainly I try to kind of just do my own thing for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
And I keep in contact with a lot of my mentors. So Rhodes and Brady, I talk to a lot still. They've helped me tremendously. They continue to help me tremendously every day.
So Ryan, if you could talk about your process of kind of going out on your own in terms of not looking for confirmation from colleagues or folks on Twitter, whoever, because we have someone on this podcast who is currently going through that same process. And I imagine
I finished on Friday. So
you feel like you're in a good spot where you're not searching for confirmation from other folks at this point?
Well, I don't know how much we've talked about on the podcast, but I challenged myself for 1 week not to be in Discord, not to be on Twitter, find my own plays. I wanted to trade in a vacuum for exactly what you're saying. I always knew that I was finding my own plays, but then I wouldn't trust myself until I saw somebody else talk about it. And I didn't want to do that anymore. So anyway, did the 1 week. And Justin, I'm happy to report that it was my most profitable week ever.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Wow.
Congrats.
Thanks.
That's awesome. So Ryan, did you kind of do the same thing? Maybe it wasn't, a week, but was that kind of a process oriented type deal as well for you?
It it was, and that's a really question. It was a slow process, to be honest. So I found when Brady took me on as his mentor, and I was able to talk. Pretty much, he was at my beck and call, sort of like as bad as it sounds, right? He'd walk me through everything, and it was awesome. And then it got to a point where I felt confident to take plays. I knew what I was doing, but um, I would look I would look at plays and they go against me, and then all of a sudden I would be like, "Oh no, what's Brady gonna think?" And then they couldn't be get a hold of him, right? And then I started. It was a few weeks of just kind of back and forth, struggling with that emotions of saying I should, maybe I should look on Discords, maybe I should look on Twitter, maybe I should be like look everywhere. And I started looking for that confirmation bias, and I realized my trading was becoming super erratic, and I was. It wasn't just that the trading was becoming erratic; my emotions were becoming erratic. I was irritable. I was all that kind of stuff. My wife was noticing it too, right? So um, at that point, I kind of just realized I needed to take a step back, and I actually had to talk with Brady, and it was same idea I mentioned earlier. I knew everything I needed to know for the most part. I just needed to bring it all together myself and what's best for me, right? So similar to what Penny did in some ways, I kind of challenged myself to say, I'm going to ignore everything. I'm going to close my discords. Twitter in small cap lands, Twitter is very important. I find PinTwit's very important because I can do a lot of research there. But identifying that what the noise is, right? So I was very I can't think of the word, but I had to be very cautious of what I was identifying, what I was looking at Twitter. So I started closing out that noise, and then just starting to trade myself. And at that point, I started to realize I knew what I was going to do. I found a process for myself within small cap land that I was able to say this is consistent. This is something I can do myself, and it gave me that confidence to say I can do this without anybody holding my hand, right? Because the more you're looking for confirmation bias, the less confidence you have in yourself, the harder it is for you to execute, even though you have confidence in yourself, but you don't at the same time, right? So
I wrote down a list of rules, say it's 4 months ago. And one of the rules was before you take the trade, confirm that another trader that you admire is also in the trade. And I look back at that rule like, WTF? Like, why was that a rule? I just feel like an insane person, but I just could not trust myself. Sorry. I just could not trust myself enough. I don't know. The things that you learn every day is learning so much. And the learning curve is so steep. And to look back, I also started in Atlas in 2020, in the summer of 2020. And I mean, honestly, PJ would be calling out the levels. Like if it hits this, it's going to hit this, it's going to hit this. And that was that was it. I was in the trade. I was looking at those levels. I didn't do anything for myself. I just watched Atlas. So to look back at some of those things and see where I am now, I can beat myself up every day for oh, you didn't trade perfectly. But then I do like to say, but look at how far you've come.
Yeah, and I think that's huge. That's a big thing that I noticed too with my trading. It was I was always looking for confirmation bias and someone to walk you through the trade. And then I realized when I gave myself that quiet period, um, and looking for my own plays, it was fascinating to see that I was on plays earlier than when they were called on Twitter. And I'm pretty sure I was identifying the same thing at the same time. I just didn't call them at the same time because I needed to just and I was like, wow, okay, I can do this. I know I can do this, right? And I have a lot of I have a lot to thank to Brady for that one. Um, with Brady, he really identified with or him. He really showed me in how to understand qualitative analysis and seeing it the bigger picture, understanding personalities of tickers, and also the personalities of these fin twit furus that which stocks they like to flock to, right? So like I know like I know some. I know if I'm looking at a certain sector and I know it's about, it feels like it's about to run, and I have a feeling that I know who a handful of the certain foods are going to hop, which tickers are going to hop onto, and I have Brady to thank tremendously on that because it's you just take notes, right? He's been doing it for years, and I did the same thing where I started taking notes. I'm like, okay, well, um, uh, Antonio Costa is going to be on XYZ every time that education runs, so to speak, right? And he always does it, and it's just a matter of the research, right? So, yeah, that's Brady to thank tremendously on that. And I guess I want to talk a little bit about just Brady in general and how we connected. It was uh, like I was saying, I was kind of struggling with that, that kind of one step forward, one step back early or late last fall. And then Brady kind of hopped in. We kind of started talking. And for me, what I've always done is I've never been afraid of failure. I've never been afraid of feeling like an idiot. I just put myself out there, I ask questions. If I get smacked down, I take that as a learning experience. That's my whole life, kind of in general. So I did that in Atlas a lot. And then Brady kind of noticed that, and he noticed that I was up late. I was always asking questions. And then him and I kind of just connected, and we kind of connected. It's funny, we connected on a mutual love for piano because both him and I were competitive pianists growing up. So
That's super cool. Also, this is a total aside, but I have a very, very good friend who is like an incredible piano player. And he used to always tell me that if you're good at math, you can be good at piano and vice versa.
How does that work?
I don't know if that works.
He said, I don't know. He said it's like the same thing in your mind. So you're engineer, math, good at piano. This is all really coming together for me.
You know what?
That's an aside.
I'll speak a little more to the piano aspect and how that helps me. But yeah, no. So Brady a little later, but Brady and I connected. We realized we're both competitive pianists, and then realized that we both have very similar personalities and interests. So he reached out to me one day in late fall and said, "Hey, I don't take on many people, but I'd love to chat and maybe help you through your struggles, right?" And it kind of snowballed from there, where he's become one of my best friends. We talk quite often. It's become more than just about trading. It's an actual friendship, right? So it's really cool to see how things kind of evolved from a mentor, and he's still my mentor. I still look up to him tremendously, and now he's a great friend of mine as well, right? So
we should really try to get him on the podcast.
oh, it'd be amazing. Yeah.
So real quick, one, I can't play any instrument, much less the piano. I'm terrible at math, and I think all of that adds up as to why I'm not exactly a successful trader, as you'd say. So I think that is noteworthy. One, I'd love to understand this whole piano thing at some point. But first, talking about Brady, Ryan, I think most people who would be listening to this are coming at this from a place of they could be newer to trading or the last few years, right? But they're not like super big on FinTwit as an example, and do not have like these big profiles. And because of that, they are having to start from new and building the relationships, right? They don't have a lot of eyes on them already, which doesn't make it as easy for them to start those new relationships. So I think it's really interesting and a testament to you that you've been able to grow those really organically, starting from kind of really being new. So,
and I think that's the biggest thing. My biggest piece of advice for anybody new, really. I always say just put yourself out there. It doesn't hurt to ask questions. It doesn't hurt to be wrong, because every time you're wrong is a lesson learned to be right for next time, right?
And for those of you who are avid Penny Lane Pod listeners, that is also what Making Sales said, and that guy's killing it.
Yeah, Making Sales is great too. It's
just asking for help, not being afraid to be wrong, and just continuing to ask questions until you understand. And that's something that's hard for me because I think it's a woman thing. I don't want to sound stupid, But it's a continual theme in all of these interviews that we do, that being willing to ask questions that maybe you should know the answer to, and just staying persistent and working really, really hard. So kudos for that. It's
Yeah,
impressive.
and I think further to that too is asking the questions, and like it's further to drowning out the noise, and but minding your own hustle too. What what's max pain and euphoria to me is not necessarily what's max pain and euphoria to you guys or anybody else, right? And it's very difficult to look on FinTwit, and I'm kind of bouncing around here, but it's kind of in the same general premise. It's very difficult to look on Discords, FinTwit chats, and everything, and see other people crushing it, or but you don't know their struggles too, right? And you don't know what's great to you, maybe what's bad to you may be amazing to others, right? So it's just trying to trying to just manage your expectations, and then kind of going back to the whole asking questions aspect. It's okay to ask questions even if you feel like you're like, even me right now, everyone, like, I'm still completely blown away that I'm being asked to be on a podcast right now, to be quite honest, and because I feel like I'm nowhere near that. But I don't have a problem reaching out to any of my colleagues, to ask them questions when I see something. I'm like, hey, uh, I'm not seeing what you're seeing. I've tried everything I can. Like, I'm not looking at a chart and saying, hey, immediately, what are you guys looking at? No, no, no. I'm trying to figure it out myself first. I think that's the biggest thing is when you approach the questions, you approach them from a stance of having having a detailed view on them, right? And knowing that you've done your research on them, because people are more willing to help you when they've seen you put the work in, right? Kind of real, hard work recognizes hard work, right? So.
For sure. Is this your first podcast?
No, I did one with yeah, it is actually my first podcast. I did an interview with 100 to a Million. He's a Twitch streamer. So
Cool. Well, so lucky to
this is
have
it. I'm
you.
blown away, honestly. I told a couple of my trading friends that I was coming on this. They're like, "Really? That's amazing! Congratulations, you deserve it." I'm like, "How do I deserve it? That sounds so weird."
Yeah, and Blaine and I are a really big deal. So
yeah, people know who we are.
That's hilarious. Can I ask one question real quick? You mentioned Twitch. Are people using Twitch to live trade, or is that for something different?
Some people use it to live trade. I have several colleagues that live trade on it. Trade Scalps, Maple Stacks, Rocket Catching Bob does it from time to time. Kerry Palmer does it. 100 a Million does it too. Myself, and that's the thing. I think people can live Twitch, but I don't have I work a full-time job too, so it's hard for me. I can't do that for one. I also don't have the attention span to talk through things as I go through that, right? I'd rather chat in the Discord to do that, right? So yeah, people do live trade. I used to Twitch all spring and summer. I do post recaps though, but I would never live Twitch ever.
Got it. So you mean post market recaps?
Yeah, post market. So I do my whole trade recap, and then I do a watch list for the next day.
That's awesome. So, all right, before we go any further, we have to discuss this piano deal.
Yeah.
I don't even know where to start. Blaine, you brought up the fast fact about pianos and math.
That one person told me that. That might not be true, but it seems true.
I don't get it.
Anyway, Ryan, you talk about the piano. I also don't know enough about it to ask a good question.
So I've actually played piano for 33 years. I'm 36 years old. So I played pretty much my whole life. It's typical Asian parent. I was put in the one thing that my parents could, like, they're like, you can't do sports, do piano, right? So
That's funny.
So you know what, it was a lot of dedication with piano. It was early. It was a lot of 3, 4, 5 hour practices a day. I ended up quitting in university because I couldn't handle university and practicing in competitive piano at the same time. So I picked it up in my adult life again, and I just play casually now. But really, I found a lot of that's kind of my story in piano, so to speak, in Cole's notes. But in terms of how it relates to trading for me, I've always said that find what you do really well in life and apply it to trading, because that'll give you the confidence to say you can do it. So with piano, the way I view it is it helped me study. It helped me excel in engineering in terms of studying. It helped me excel in my profession in terms of memorization and all that. Because with piano, the way it works is the way I view it is, I'm not going to look at a full 10, 20 page piece of 10, 20 page song and say I can play this in one go. I'm going to take it out in bite-sized portions, and that's how I and as I take it out in bite-sized portions, I'm going to master that little portion, and then I'm going to go to the next portion, master that next portion, and then connect those two, and keep going back and forth in memorization, right? And similar to how until I can perfect it, and then applying that to trading and how I did it is similar idea. I found a method that I really liked. A strategy that I thought, oh, this is really great. I'd abuse it. I'd look at it every night. I'd look for every chart. I'd look for it on every chart I possibly could. And then I would just try to imprint in my head. Okay, I got it imprinted. I move on to the next thing. And then I try to imprint that. And then I see how do those tie together, right? And that's kind of how my mind works. Not necessarily, I'm a very sequential kind of person, so I need instructions. I'm not an abstract thinker. So the whole quality, like it's trading that way and applying what I know in piano to trading that way, it makes sense to me. So I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that's fascinating. One and two, I'd like that you kind of make it methodical the way that you described it for both playing the piano and trading. So it sounds like to me you've kind of hit that quote unquote 10,000 hour rule when it comes to piano, right? If you were going 5-6 hours a day for 33 years, back of the napkin math would say you've probably hit the 10,000 hours mark. Do you feel like that's a pretty decent yardstick, as most people have used it in the past for mastering something? And if so, do you feel like that would be the same for trading, right? And if the market's only open from 9:30 to 4, 10,000 hours is going to take quite a few years.
Well, yeah, I don't. That is an interesting benchmark, and I've heard that several times, and I don't disagree with that, right? And I think a better benchmark, and I think a better benchmark is kind of thinking. For me, another benchmark is thinking. I did a 4-year engineering degree. It was the hardest degree I've ever taken in my life. Trading is 10 times harder than I ever did anything in university. It took me 4 years to get through engineering.
So if anyone's looking to get into trading, there's your motivation right there. It's harder than
well, it is, and at the same time, and it is the hardest thing. And I think kind of going back, and you guys, I think you guys can relate to the whole appeal of trading is just the ability to create financial freedom and the ability to. For me, it's the ability to challenge myself every day and not feel like I'm stuck in some sort of work ruts where I'm, doing the same thing up and down, or same thing every day at work, right? With trading, it's you apply something that you're trying really hard to work at and be good at, and also be able to reap the rewards at the same time, right? So for me, yeah, it's the hardest thing I've ever done, but it's also I see there's a big light at the end of the tunnel that I still am running to, right?
I love that. And I love using your prior skills at piano and transferring them to trading and knowing how to do that. That's so interesting because obviously people get into trading from all different walks of life, and you bring knowledge from your life into trading to develop your own strategy. So I loved hearing that from you. Also, another thing I wanted to touch on that we talked about a little earlier is your journaling. Could you tell us a little bit about how you got into that, how important it is in your trading, and how often you do it?
Yeah. So with journaling, I was actually, I think Rhodes actually told me at one point, he's like, keep a Discord of everything you do, right? And so I actually created my own Discord back in fall of last year, because before I would kind of do nothing. I was like, oh, I can do whatever, right? And then I started realizing, obviously, if you make mistakes, you forget about them, whatever. So I started creating a Discord and tracking my own calls or tracking my own work, and then kind of fell off the map on that. And then with Brady's, when I started going on with Brady's like, keep a journal. Like this is, and I kept reading it on Twitter, and he kept reading it. I kept reading it and not thinking much about it. And then Brady's like, you want to be successful, keep a journal. So for me, my journal's always been, it's evolved quite a bit. I do it every day. I think I talked to several colleagues and they say what they know me for are my journals, which is wild. But I find for me, what they help me do is reflect on what I did good, what I did bad, and then also being able to just imprint and take it on. Similar to the idea with the piano. Um, when I'm in the moment trading in the day, I'll make several mistakes. I get caught on, as is everybody, I get caught in emotions. I get caught on tilts. My brain blocks off things that I don't want to see. My brain remembers things that I want to see. Well, that's not the best way to remember things. So for me with journaling, similar to piano, it allows me to just, repeat what I did and imprint it again and say, I messed up. I did great. Move forward, right? Take those lessons and move forward. So that's my biggest takeaway with journaling.
So where are you still journaling on Discord, or are you using a different service?
No, I use Twitter actually, and that's
fantastic.
part of why I use Twitter. I use Twitter because it forces me to be accountable. Because it sounds weird because I don't care whether I had 0 followers or whatever. I have 10,000 now. I don't really care, right? But for me, journaling has always been to put it out there. It kind of in the back of my mind, it holds me accountable because I feel like people are waiting for me to journal. So I'm like, okay, I have to be honest. I have to do this because if I don't do it, I'm going to disappoint people. And I know it's maybe an ego thing at that point, but it helps me mentally to say I have to journal. Doesn't matter if usually I journal 9 times out of 10, right? And I'll say I'm doing it regardless. But that 1 out of 10 times where I'm like I'm having a real shit day. Sorry for the language. If I'm having a really garbage day, um, I force myself to say, you know what? Part of what I need to do is I need to learn myself and I need to put myself out there. I need to say, just be honest with myself, right? And yeah, if that's being honest with someone else, then great, right? And say I did terribly. So I had a terrible day on Tuesday, I think it was, and I was 0 for 11. It was brutal, but I journaled every single trade. It was a painful 30 minutes of going through every chart, realizing that I made every mistake that I knew I shouldn't have made, but I did anyways. But I took that and I applied it to Wednesday, and I came out Wednesday okay. Had I not done that, I would have been on tilt on Wednesday and I'm over emotional, right? So what it does, and I guess kind of going back to the journaling, what it does in terms of just helping me identify good and bad and move forward, it helps bring me back to ground, whether good or bad.
I love that. I love the accountability piece. We just spoke with Ben, Pattern Profits, which that was a great interview. If you haven't listened to it, or any of your listeners haven't listened to it, you should. And he does his watch list every day. And he says that he has to do it for himself anyway, so he might as well do it for other people. But that sort of added pressure of having to, that he puts on himself, but having to do a watch list and then putting that watch list out there and seeing if those ideas work out has really elevated his game.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great takeaway for anyone
listening.
I'll
certainly say that this certainly helped in terms of that. And like I said, my journal's evolved from doing a daily kind of good and bad to also tracking tickers. And that's something that Brady helped me with a lot is every time I journal and identify a pattern or something, some sort of personality trait within a ticker, I have a separate part of my notes that I say, this is the ticker. These are the notes you should identify with it, right? These are the certain patterns you should identify. And do I go through those every day? Like, do you go through that part every day? No, not necessarily. But that being said, if I see in small cap line, say I was going to take a swing in something that I've traded in the past, I might quickly check, do a control F and say, hey, have I looked at this? And I'm like, oh, look, I have looked at this. I'm like, okay. Oh, okay, I can see it, right? And inherently, I already knew that because by looking at the chart, I can see what I already had identified, but it helps me kind of just, reaffirm what I'm thinking. Kind of just similar, again, I'll go to the piano reference. Similar to the piano, if I haven't played a piece in years and I open up the book just briefly to look at the first few notes, I'm like, oh, okay, I remember this. I'm good.
So I want to go one step further into journaling. So you were talking about obviously being able to pull open charts and look back through those, but charts aside, when you're looking at your journal, what's a couple of things that you're looking at? Obviously, besides, the win versus loss, right? I mean, are you critically analyzing whether you were scaling in or out? Are you analyzing certain price kind of psychological thresholds, like, even money or on the 25 cents, 50 cents? So is it kind of like a price analysis? Are there like 1 to 2 things that you're usually looking for when you are looking back at your journal?
For me, I don't even look at the price, honestly. I look at whether it was a win, loss, or break even, but I don't look at the scale in terms of what it is. It's for me, for my journaling is, did I execute properly? Um, if I took a loss, it's because I didn't execute properly, most likely. If I took a small loss, it was because I executed perfectly, right? If I took a big win, did I scale appropriately? How did I scale within those levels that I've identified? Did I just being honest with myself and saying, did I note the market sentiment? Um, did I trade with the trend? All that kind of stuff within each ticker. And and these are the mental notes. It's a lot of it. Like sometimes my journals are very in depth. Sometimes they're a little bit more, a little bit more bullet point and kind of what do you call it? Yeah, hit and run, so to speak. But for the most part, I'm trying to identify within every trade that I do, what if it was. I'm trying to identify my emotions within it, for one. Um, I'm identifying my emotions. I'm identifying my scales appropriately, and kind of identifying if I traded my plan properly within it. And if I had no plan at all, if I had no plan, it was a terrible trade. And I've been caught in several. I'm sure, and you guys as well probably, been caught in trades where you don't follow any plan.
For sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Ryan, did you ever have a rock bottom moment or blow up an account or anything like that?
Oh, that's a great question. Um, I've been very fortunate where I've never blown up an account. Um, I think that's the one struggle I always had, and I still have. A lot of these, uh, and it's huge. I always say it's take advantage to all these young kids that are coming in their 20s, and it's awesome for them. Like, take advantage of having this fearless attitude about it, like, and not having the responsibility of kids, home, mortgage, and all those kind of stuff, job, right? And because you can go in and say, I can do it, and go fearless, right? For me, I've always been fearful of losing my money, and I know that may not be the right attitude to have, but for me, every dollar lost, it doesn't matter. It's still something I think about, where I could apply that to my mortgage or whatever, right? And yeah, it may not be the right attitude, but it's the attitude that keeps me kind of leveled. So that's why I've never blown up an account, right? Maybe that's why my account's never really gone through to the moon, so to speak, either, right? But that's I've never blown up an account, thankfully. But in terms of like my lowest moments, I've had plenty. And I have days where I'm like, I'm gonna quit. This is stupid. Why am I doing this, right? Last year, when in fall, when I lost a bunch of money, and before I kind of figured a strategy, I was like, oh, why am I doing this? Even with Brady, I had the euphoria of January, February, like everywhere else, and then in March came, I'm like, man, why am I doing this? Like, this is stupid, right? Even the past couple of weeks, there's been moments in this new large cap land I'm learning. I'm like, oh, maybe I should just go back to what I'm good at, right? So, I'm not a professional trader like Mullins, like PJ and all them, and I aspire to be like guys like that, where I can do this full time, and have the confidence to come into the market and say, yes, I can. I'm okay to lose a little, and I'm okay to lose a little money, but like, to have the confidence to say I can do this every day, so to speak, right? And I know I can, I know I have it in me, but it's definitely, just like everyone else, it's the roller coaster of emotions are very ever present, but they've come a lot less as I've gone through this journey.
I really love how relatable that is to everyone. And we on the podcast totally preach being careful with your money, not YOLOing, not FOMOing, just being safe. I think that's fantastic. You haven't blown up an account. Justin, what do you think?
I don't know that it's fair to say that I've blown up an account.
Well, we've full ported a couple losers, but
we certainly have. Yeah, without a doubt.
and to that note too, it's like I know when I'm going on tilt when I start when I've done things like that. I've full ported things in the past. Did degen scalp for a few cents because I just need a win. I don't care how small it is, right? And after I do it, I'm like, God, that was the dumbest thing I've ever done.
Yeah, that's a feeling I also can identify with, as Blaine talked about. But yeah, that's good. So,
but I think at
So,
the end of the day, we're all human, right? Like it's I don't know how far along in the journey we are. Like Penny, it sounds like you and I are similar in terms of timing, in terms of our journey,
yeah.
and it doesn't matter how far along you are. You're going to go through the emotional ups and downs, and I don't think anyone should be ashamed of that.
no, right, and as you said, we are all human. I mean, and because of that, like whether you like it or not, we're all greedy. It just is what it is, right? And
Yep.
sometimes that really can affect your decision making abilities.
Yeah, I take a lot of I have a lot of respect and admiration for singles and doubles. I think you guys have interviewed him, but
Twice.
his discipline is unreal. Like
Unbelievable.
it's really started to resound with me as of recently. Like I've always been inspired and very admired him from afar, but just recently I've started to really realize I'm like, if I just follow rules, it doesn't matter, right? If I just followed rules like him, it wouldn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
I had that actually yesterday. Yesterday was not a great day for me. The market wasn't good. And I have this mantra that I write before every trading day. I write like a full page of sort of what I want to accomplish that day. And yesterday I just got sort of in the weeds and a little bit scared, and I don't like being scared when I'm trading. So I took a little time out and just wrote like follow the plan like a few times because I have a plan. And if I follow the plan and follow those rules, I can't get hurt. And I wanted to like keep going. But I actually was messaging with singles and doubles, just like the security of having a plan takes away that feeling of fear for me, which is a massive gift because just buying or anywhere or chasing or not knowing where to put your stop or just picking a random place to put your stop is just was more than I could handle emotionally. And now I know exactly what I'm going to lose on the trade if I lose, and my mental health is so much better.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, we are sort of beginning to wrap up a little bit, and there's two questions that I love to ask. The first one is, what do you think is the sexiest chart pattern?
In small cap land, I absolutely love spikeable charts, ones that I can see consistent spikes within a certain reoccurring pattern. That's something I'm very good at identifying. So, what's an example I'm trying to think of that I like? MDRR, for example, in the real estate sector. I like that chart because I know every 10 to 12 days that thing's going to spike 20-30%. And I can find it finds the bottom perfectly. You grab the bottom the day before, 2 days before, you start scaling in a day or two before you think it's going to happen, and it goes. And you take your profits, you run.
Love that.
I love charts like that, especially, and I can, yeah, those are the perfect ones for me personally.
Awesome. Second question. If a brand new trader came to you and wanted to get into trading, what tips would you give them or what plan would you give them to follow?
Oh my goodness. Watch. So the biggest thing for me is be an observer, be a spectator. Find find the best. Find a trader that you can relate to personality wise. That you think you can not only. And when I say personality wise, yeah, it means personal on a personal level. Because likely, if you can relate to them on a personal level, you can relate to them in terms of how they trade too. And just shadow trade them. Watch them see how they do it. Why are they seeing what they do? Why are they calling things where they are? And why are they taking profits where they are? And just that's really how I grew the most is just by watching and finding guys like Rhodes, like Brady, like Lunar Aces, guys who I am able to see. I was able to just watch and be like, I get these guys, right, and why are they making it, and then just understanding how they make their trades, right, and I think just that's the aspect of developing strategy, and then the mentality part is just keep at it, don't give up, right. You're gonna go through your ups and downs. You're gonna feel like you want to quit. You're gonna feel like you want to quit your job some days to do it. You're gonna feel like you want to quit trading some days just because it's terrible, right? And I think if you really hone in on who you are as a person and what kind of trading appeals to you the most and what relates to you the best, you're gonna find success if you can just manage those expectations and not look at anyone else's not look on the road at anybody else's car.
I love that. Really good advice.
It's a good
Justin,
analogy.
do you have any questions?
No, I just don't look at anyone else's car on the road. Really, I like the way that sounds. That was a good analogy. I've never heard that before. It's like the keeping up with the Joneses, right? But I like that. So that's great.
All right. Well, Ryan, are there any last thoughts that you want to tell people?
No, no, that's really it. I really appreciate you guys having me on. It's been an absolute honor. So thank you.
This was so delightful. I loved chatting with you. I love your thought process is so beautiful to me. I'm so glad you shared that with us.
Methodical is good. I think I need that in my life. Blaine, you probably do too.
Sure. Brian, can you tell everyone where to find you during the day?
So I'm mainly on GMT Discord. If you go to my Twitter, I should actually add it to my Twitter. But yeah, I'm mainly on GMT Discord with guys like Lunar Aces, Fearless Trader, Rodessa was there, and then yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, and really look forward to continuing to watch your journey. And I hope that you'd be willing to come back on at some point and have a follow-up chat.
Absolutely. Anytime, I'd be honored to come back on.
Cool.
Oh, thank you. As always, thank you to our producer, Joel Edwards, and Chesley Lowe for this amazing banjo music. Please like and subscribe and share the podcast. It helps us so much when you do that. We appreciate you guys. Thanks.